Apparently not, which is awesome. So I'm, like Mike said, I'm Adam Engerbretson. I moved here to Springfield to go to school from Minneapolis, Minnesota, where it's freezing out, so I'm really warm right now. So I have a bachelor's degree in biological chemistry. I don't know if you know, but Springfield has a lot of universities with lots of students who like to apply for jobs at pharmacies and hospitals and stuff like that. I got diddly squat trying to go that route. And so I fell back on a hobby of mine, which was installing WordPress sites and ModX sites and pretending that I was a web developer, and decided to make some money off of it. And I found Laravel, and it just completely revolutionized. I wouldn't have a career today if it weren't for Taylor Rockwell, which is a little melodramatic if you ask me, but it's the truth. So I've been freelancing since I graduated in May. I also do mobile applications lately with AppGyver, which is the coolest thing in the world. Is anybody interested in hybrid mobile app development? Mike, take note. Couple people. If I showed you how easy it was, you would be interested, trust me. So anyway. Yes, well, it uses PhoneGap too. Well, PhoneGap uses Cordova. Cordova is the underlying framework that kind of does that for you. And AppGyver is kind of like an AngularJS component that could be used, and they have a CLI to help build your applications for you. So yeah, it's similar. But its focus is built on Angular, and it's a bunch of cool stuff like that. So it's my favorite so far that I've come across. So anyway, let's talk about Laravel. It's really cool. They have a bunch of cool little things on their website. Most of these slides, by the way, are from the website. So if you forget it, go to the website. So they say things like expressive, beautiful syntax, tailored for your team, modern toolkit, all that kind of stuff, which doesn't mean much to me. So let's talk about what it really is. It is definitely a modern PHP framework. It's definitely moving PHP forward. It's becoming more and more known in PHP because of the community that's around Laravel and how popular it's gotten incredibly quickly. It is incredibly easy to use, which makes it really easy to rapidly prototype softwares. I mean, I've got clients who say, I want to see something first, and I'll say, yeah, give me a couple hours, I'll go do something for free and show you what we can do and give you an idea, and then we can move forward from there. And I'm willing to give away that free time because it's so cheap with how easy Laravel is. We have our own excuse me, it has its own ORM, it's called Eloquent. When I say simple routing, I mean incredibly easy to use routing, and yet really powerful. It does a lot. It's built for growth and built for testing. I've written this many tests in my life, but it can still be really easy to test your code in Laravel. So Laravel, as it's built on Composer, or it's built around Composer, use the Composer PHP dependency injection or dependency management tool. It's like Ruby Gems, NPM, stuff like that. It's called Composer, and you can install the Laravel command line utility globally with Composer, and if you add that to your path, you have this new Laravel tool, which gives you one command, Laravel new, pass in the project name, and you'll get a directory structure that looks similar to this. Now, Composer is known for being incredibly slow. Have you guys seen that XKCD comic where the boss comes in, he's like, you guys get back to work, and they're like, oh, our video's compiling, and he says, okay, carry on, right? The comic's been remade for Composer as well because it's known for being ridiculously slow. But what this Laravel new does is Taylor actually has a cron job on a server that every day zips up, or runs Composer install on a fresh project, zips it, and then this command downloads it for you. So it's a really convenient way to get started with a new project, and instead of waiting 10 minutes or 5 or 10 minutes for that to work, you get this in like a minute. So that's how we get started. Now I'm going to dive right in. What I have in these slides, like I said, is all from the documentation. I just want to cover some of the most basic stuff of Laravel, and then we're going to dive in and actually code. And then I'm going to show you Laravel Forge, which is we're going to put this thing online in like 5 minutes, which will be fun. So routing. As we all know, a website needs a URL to access. So we can use Laravel routing to define what code should execute in our ORM when the browser arrives at a certain URL. In this case, we have route get, which is just going to accept our root URL, and we can pass in a closure, which is really nice. For this is one of the nice things about rapid prototyping. It's just you can put some code right in there. You can do some math. A lot of times, if I have a client who wants me to import a CSV file, I'll just do route/import, put all my logic there, and then I'll just comment that line out when I'm ready to deploy it, and then I just uncomment it again. It's a really quick and easy way to just put some code in there real quick. But as your application grows, you don't want your entire application domain in your routes.php file. So we extract things out to controllers, which are the solid design principles tell us that classes should have a single responsibility. And so the responsibility of a controller is to accept requests from the over HTTP and return responses. So that's pretty much what a controller is supposed to do. And you see this @ sign. This defines the controller class name and then the method on that class that will be used to handle that particular request. Now, what's really nice, too, is Laravel ships this thing called a RESTful Resource Controller. And using the PHP artisan command, which is a CLI that ships and it's specific to your application installation, we can use this artisan make controller command to very quickly generate a RESTful resource controller. And if you register route resource, you'll get, and I'll show these in a bit later, but there's like 8 routes that it will automatically register for you with just this one line of code that's a full RESTful resource on in this case, users. So you have an index method, and we'll go through all these: create, store, show, edit, update, and delete. Skipping over some things, this is really poorly organized. Middlewares. So, have anyone heard of Stack PHP? No? Okay. I've heard of it. I don't understand every bit of it, but I guess the idea is that as a request comes into your app, it trickles down through several layers, and the layers are responsible for doing one thing and then passing it off to the next layer, and you can manipulate the request, you can reject the request at any point in this stack. And that's what Laravel has implemented here with middlewares. So we can create this class called isOldEnough, and we'll register it into our HTTP kernel and say this is a middleware. And if we define this middleware either on our entire application or in just a few routes, essentially we'll send the request through this handle method. And we can, in this case, if your age is not quite 200 years old, then we're going to redirect you to home. This is for geezers only. And if the condition passes, we'll go ahead and return next request. In Laravel 4, we're on 5 now as of a month ago or so. In Laravel 4, these were called filters. And there was a lot of weird magic stuff that Taylor did. He kind of moved away from that into more straightforward classes in in Laravel 5. And this is the how filters got moved over into middlewares.
So does a middleware apply to a specific route or a specific controller, or does it apply universally?
You can apply middlewares to routes. You can apply them universally. You can apply them to controllers in the constructor of the controller. And you can apply them to controller methods also in the constructor of the controller. So you have a lot of ways in which you can add them on. And it's really flexible as to where you want to put them. By the way, feel free to ask questions and stop me. I'm just kind of cruising. So this is an example of how we would install a middleware on a route. If we had this route called dealing with aging, we define it, and I forgot to put the @ in the method here. So it's there, you just can't see it. Middleware is old enough, and this string here would actually translate to the fully qualified class name, and that would be defined in your HTTP kernel, which I can show you once we get into some code. So that's middleware. What I love about middleware is Laravel ships with an authenticate middleware. Oh, authentication out of the box. Who loves it? In that authentication filter, or that middleware, usually what I'll do is I will share a variable across all my views. There's one method that you can call that will share a variable to all of your views using the Blade templating engine, which I'll show you. And I usually just say $me, and it's the user object. And I can do that from the middleware. It's put it one place, and anywhere in my application, if that view is loaded while the user's logged in, I have a me variable. It's really helpful. Again, controllers, this is a basic style controller. Here we're going to return a view, which is index in this case. I'll show you some more cool stuff about how Blade works and how it's similar to Twig, just a lot better, obviously. So standard controller, again, the responsibility of controllers is to receive requests and return responses. Now, again, remember that command I said, make controller. It automatically generates a resource controller. These are all the routes you get. Again, really poor order, sorry. But these are all the routes we'll get. This being the path. Now, in this case, the word resource is going to refer to whatever the first parameter of route resource is. So if we were to create a resource controller, we would define users probably. And so the route for /users would be a get variable it would call the index method on that controller, and it would have a route name of resource.index. And all the way down, you've got the full CRUD RESTful style API can be generated like that. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to create, I set up a really simple blog, just some basic architecture, and we're going to go ahead and create the admin CRUD on those blog posts. And it's going to take 20 minutes. It's going to be awesome. So just a quick overview of what these 7 or so methods do. In this case, this is the index, so the responsibility of this route would be to show you a list of all of said resource. So in this case, we're going to go user all. Now this is eloquent. Again, I can show you a little bit more about that once we dive into code, but that's a database query right there, magical. And then we'll call this view users.index and pass in an associative array, this compact function. It gives you an array where compact gives you an array where the key is the name of the variable and the value is the value of the variable. So it just takes all your variables that you pass into here and gives you an associative array. And that's the format that this view needs, is you give it an associative array of key value pairs, and then those keys are variables in your view with the associated values. The create method on a resource controller is very straightforward. This is where you're going to return a view to create a new resource, create a new user. As somebody who's maybe already logged in, you might want to register a new user or create a new blog post. What you can do here as well is, say you're creating a new blog post and your blog post needs to be in a category. Well, you need to render on your view a drop-down list of your categories, right? So you might do a database query here that says category all. You might sort it, you might filter it, do whatever you need to do, and then pass that resulting collection into your view so you can generate your select field based on the categories. Store, this is once we've filled out that form for the user at the blog post. When we hit submit, we send a post request to this method. Again, here's quick, eloquent syntax. User create. What's so cool about this create method is it will take your input. It will automatically protect you against mass assignment. So if we say that a user model can only have an email and a password, there's only 2 things I want the view or the HTTP request to be able to fill automatically. I define that on the model, and I'll show you some of that later. I can pass in all of the request input. I can pass in the get variables, the post variables. Somebody can come in and hack my form and add whatever they want. They can add password that can say super equals 1 or permissions equals 500, whatever, however they could hack that. But this method here will protect you against mass assignment and prevent that sort of stuff from happening. If I wanted to do the same thing and then come down here and say user, I don't know, if you needed to do something else to your class, to your object, say it's a blog post, and you wanted to automatically generate a slug right here, you could just say new post, pass in the input, and you'd have the same result as this create method, but it wouldn't save it for you right away. So then you can go on to manipulate the model, add a slug on it, and then call post save right at the end before you return a redirect to the route. This is an example of the use of route names, which is really convenient. If you decide to change your URI, you decide to move your entire application into a /admin something, you don't have to go edit all your views because you're using route names. Pass in the route parameter of the user ID, and that'll automatically generate a redirect to that particular route, which looks like this. Since there's a route parameter, if you remember that table, and I went over it really quickly, but in this case, the URI would be /user/ID number. So that ID number is going to be passed in right here, which we can then use user find to find that specific database resource and generate a simple page that shows the user. If you wanted to do things like grab all the user's comments, Eloquent can do really cool database relationships really easily. So you could just call user load comments right here. It would automatically load them into the Eloquent model and pass the user in the same way. And then on your view, you could just call user-arrow comments, and you have an array. Essentially, it's a glorified array of your comments for that user, and you can render them out on that page if you see fit. Edit, this is the same thing as the create method, but in this case, we have an instance already. We need to figure out a way to determine, well, which user are we trying to edit, so we can pre-populate that form. Obviously, you don't want to hit edit user and have a blank form. So this is what that controller's method's for. Update, so when you submit the edit form, In this case, we're finding the existing instance of the user in our database. Then we're going to use this fill method. This fill method does the same thing as that create method did, where it protects you against mass assignment, and then you just go ahead and call save when you're done. So this will filter out all your request input, only apply the values that you've allowed in your model, and then save it. And then we'll return a redirect again. Destroy. We all get it, right? Cool thing about Laravel too is a lot of modern browsers don't accept or don't handle put, patch, and delete HTTP verbs, right? You can spoof it with Laravel. And Laravel has a form builder that I'm actually now maintaining. It's been taken out of the core. But they have a form builder that will automatically do that for you. So pretty much all forms are post requests, but it has an underscore method, hidden input that's generated for you with, you know, whatever the method is, delete or whatever, and it will make it so that this request would actually be interpreted as a delete request instead of a post request. Delete the user and go back to the index. Woohoo! Now, if you noticed, user equals user find. User equals user find over and over and over again. So let's use some route model binding. And this is what's really cool about Laravel is if we decide we want the user's parameter. I'm gonna go back to illustrate this better. These are what the routes look like, and we're talking about these particular routes. When we define users as a resource, a route resource, and we get all these routes, it's going to register routes that say /users in curly braces, where the users in curly braces is a route parameter, and that's interpreted by your controllers. So in all four of those routes, we can say, okay, instead of giving me just the string value of whatever was passed into the URL, we can say route model users. This is the route parameter. That's always going to refer to an ID of this model. Bada bing, bada boom, you have a user object, a fully hydrated user object that's retrieved the record from your database into your controller method. So you no longer have to do that user : find. And it applies to all of those methods in the controller that accept that value from the route. And then you might say, well, what if it's a slug? Well, we can decide, okay, instead of route model, we'll just call route bind. Anytime we find this bad example, sorry, posts. This is posts, you just can't see it. Route bind posts, anytime the posts variable is a route parameter, we'll do this closure value, whatever's in here. We might say, okay, I want to look up on the posts table where the slug is equal to whatever was provided and it's published, and if that query result returns 0 results, we'll throw a 404 exception. Otherwise, we'll just return this instance. And now every controller method that accepts or that reacts to a route that has this particular key in it will get that instance instead. Does that make sense? Just some convenient, fun stuff. Views. Who likes HTML? Anybody? Oh, man. Drives me nuts. Drives me nuts. This is a simple template that you might see. Actually, if you see this in a web application, you need to call a designer. But if this is an example of the template you might see, you know, you've got your sidebar here, and we're going to use this @ syntax, and that's going to be referring to a section in this case. So this entire section is called sidebar. The content that's in there represents that section, and I'll show you how we use that later. Yield takes the section from this view. As you can see, this view extends the layout's master, that particular file we're just looking at. And if we come straight down here, the section content, this is going to be yielded where you have yield content in your layout. And then we can also extend particular sections. If a section was defined, we can then append to it. Or if we got rid of this @parent, only this paragraph tag would show up in that sidebar area. So it's really easy to very quickly have a layout, have a bunch of views that extend that layout, section content, section sidebar, section notices, section whatever you need. Yes?
Can you show that last?
Yes. So in this case, we're defining a section so that we can override it later if we need to. In this case, we're saying spit out a section if there is one. So I never use this one, to be honest. I never ever use that one. I just always use yield in my layouts, and then my pages just define that section, which is then going to be yielded there.
one good example for like section would be something like putting your calls to your JavaScript files, and you have a page where you want to override that or append to it, right?
Yeah, yeah. I usually what I'll do is at the end right here before /body I'll do yield scripts, and right at the end of head I'll do yield styles. That way every view has, if you need to append some JavaScript at the very bottom, you can. If you need to append some style declarations at the top, you can. Obviously that's not great practice if you're really good at front-end development, but I'm not, so there you go. That's all I got. Cool, my slides suck. Community resources, laravel.com/docs. Everything you saw came from the documentation. So if you're interested in Laravel and you want to dive in, read it cover to cover twice. I kid you not. It will be so much easier once you have done that. Laracasts.com, like Mike had mentioned, Jeffrey Way, he's the old editor-in-chief at Envato. Best teacher ever. And all his videos are screencasts. So you watch him code, and he talks, and his voice just makes you crack up, especially if you watch it at 2.5 speed. It's so much fun. The Laravel Collective is a community organization that I started because Taylor Otwell started growing the framework more recently. He's been growing it forever, but more recently he started to outgrow some of its older features, namely the form builder, route annotations, which did not exist, and he started working on them, and then he abandoned them, and I said, people are going to be pissed if you abandon route annotations, including myself, so I'm going to take it over for you. And also the remote component. He's got a very easy way for you to SSH into remote servers with code and execute commands. That component has been removed from the core as well. So the Laravel Collective is an organization. Our only job is to make sure these packages will install on future versions of Laravel, and we're going to maintain the versioning syntax just to make life a little easier. Because he did not ship HTML version 5.0. He did not ship annotations version 5.0, and he did not ship SSH 5.0.
So is there not a core team for Laravel? Or is it just
Taylor Otwell?
Okay.
Yeah. He has a guy, Graham Campbell. His job is to police the GitHub issues and pull requests for code style. Oh, he gets on my nerves sometimes. But the code is, I mean, it's gorgeous. Like, I'm glad he's there because people submit pull requests and they don't follow the style conventions, and it can be a nightmare. So he has that. He does have a couple other people that they're kind of under the radar. His GitHub organization has him publicly, though.
So how does he find it?
I'll show you. I'll show you. He was working with a company. What?
Datatronics.
No, recently, last year. This one. Be Snappy. Okay, Be Snappy is a online help desk email kind of thing that was built. He used to work at that company, and the CEO of that company gave him every other Friday off to go work on this, and that's how he made his life. And then towards late last year, he decided to switch over to halftime, so it was every other week, Laravel, back to work. But then January 1st, he quit. He resigned, and he's working full-time on Laravel now because he has one product that's online that's making him obviously enough money to make a living, and he has another one launching next week. Here's the one that's online right now, Laravel Forge, which, who hates provisioning servers, web servers? Thank you. Really? You guys like it? You're nuts. Click of a button. It's so easy, and I'll show you, because the code that we write, oh, I got a half hour. The code that we write, we're going to get it online. And Envoy, which is coming soon. Deployments made easy. So what it's called, he said he was going to let me see it, so hopefully he'll let me see it tomorrow or something, because it's going to launch next week. But all of his products are amazing. So, and they're obviously referenced on the website, so when you go there, and you'll see all the amazingness. One thing I forgot to mention is the best thing about Laravel, by far, is the community. I've never seen in my life such a community who's so passionate about helping each other. We talk about open source, and at least when I first heard open source, I'm like, well, that's retarded. Everybody's just going to use a bunch of free code, and nobody's going to get anything. It's a waste of time. Obviously, we're all grateful for that. But the Laravel community is really bound around the community helping each other out. So I had a guy yesterday who found out that I ported over the remote component. He's like, can I send you some money? I said, no, go submit a pull request to Laravel and fix an issue. And that's kind of the whole entire attitude of the community. We've got a Slack group where you can just log in, ask any question. Taylor's on there. He's so approachable. It's not even fair. phenomenal community. If you're looking for a community where you can learn to excel with the help of others, here's an example. Laracast, 43 hours of learning, 436 lessons with 21 series on his video. He's the only guy who does them. He's the only guy. Taylor has 3 videos on this site. The rest are Jeffrey Way. Incredible.
How long is it going to do that for?
I want to say I was going to say less than a year.
Yeah, it's been a solid year.
Okay, it hasn't been 2 years, for sure.
They're good.
And they're really good. Yeah.
And obviously it has, a Laravel flavor to it, obviously, but, I mean, you can learn a lot just about general programming.
My favorite one is Object-Oriented Bootcamp. If you're not a PHP person and you want to start learning, start here. This series is probably not free. I don't blame them. $9 a month. Woohoo! So expensive. Yeah, and it's
I played with Laravel, and I agree. It seems like a really good program. What, given the fact that this is completely controlled by one individual, what's the risk that a person takes in adopting this? I mean, you build an app and you're hoping for like a 5-year or whatever life. How do you evaluate that?
There's been a lot of talk about, and we can talk about this afterwards. I'll answer you really quickly, and then if you have more questions, I can help you afterwards because I want to make sure I get to this. But there's been a lot of questions about, are you going to create an LTS version? What's the plan for LTS and stuff like that? And he doesn't have it written down. He needs to. He knows that. But pretty much he's on the honor system. If there's a security fix, he's going to go do it. And he's going to make sure that that patch goes out to all the previous versions. And he's not the only one. I imagine he is another owner in the GitHub organization. And Laravel, the community strength that it has right now, it will go on. This isn't going to fizzle. So it's a valid concern. And
something happens to the guy.
Yeah, if something happens to the guy, there's at least people who can take over. And obviously, those are people that he trusts to touch his code because they have the access on GitHub. So that would be tragic and obviously a valid concern. My clients ask me that question all the time, and it's hard to answer. But to be honest, I would just say that at the very least, there is somebody who would change the ownership of the GitHub organization and the community would move it forward, or he has a backup plan, somebody who would continue it. That's as good as I have for you, but you can ask him. That's how approachable he is. You can ask him. So yeah, let's run some code. I did some things beforehand. I have the coolest looking blog you've ever seen in your life. You like it? I know. Source is open on GitHub. So simple blog. All this, what I've done is this code is on GitHub as is right now, and I'm going to push it when we're done. And what I did is I added tags. I added releases for like each kind of phase. So if you guys want to go in and go to the oldest release and see what I did to start, and then go to the next one, and I kind of outline what I've done. And I'm so sorry I didn't ignore the idea folder. And if you don't know what the idea folder is, I didn't do that till like halfway through, and I didn't realize it. I'm so sorry. So all those diffs are going to have a bunch of idea crap in it. So sorry. But anywho, that's there. Go look at those releases. I have details about notice how I did this and whatever, and you can hopefully learn from that. So this is your default application structure. Do you have me? Do you see me? Okay. There's a bunch of cool stuff about Homestead and local development and all that kind of stuff. It's in the documentation I don't have time for. But this is running on Homestead on my local machine. No network requests with the exception of Hangouts. But so let's just take a peek at our routes.php. Can you see? Can you read it? Here, I'll at least do this. No, I won't. I can do it, I promise. I know there's a way to do it.
Does Picam Plus not work?
Nope.
You must have custom key bindings.
I do. I very much so do. Oh, yeah, that's probably it. Sorry. Ah! There you go. He gets a point. Okay. So here's our routes file. Yeah. Sorry, I should have spent more time doing this.
Looking for soft route?
Yeah.
Right from the getter.
This guy knows what's up. Use soft wraps.
Yeah, actually, the pinch to zoom is actually bad. It doesn't actually expand the text. It zooms in on your actual.
That's retarded. Okay, well, I'll try to show you. This is our admin section. We're just going to hide that. So here's our home view that we're looking at right over here. Sorry, I have to go back and forth. I don't have enough real estate. This is the name of the route. As is how you define the name of the route. And then our controller and method name. And then I also have post.show, and you'll see that we have the entire route is /variable, which obviously can get really dangerous. Put those at the bottom of your routes file. Let the overrides happen first, because they don't work if you register an override later. So yeah, this should be at the very bottom. And then route bind slug, again, this is going to essentially run a closure. Whenever a value is passed into this URL and it's matched, we're going to essentially call post, where the slug is equal to the slug, first one, or throw a model not found exception, which you're responsible for catching yourself. Actually, I think this method is gone as of 5.0 point something. I think you got rid of it, and I'm so upset. And then these controllers, these ship with Laravel. The controllers are empty. They use a trait where all that kind of basic logic can be found, but authenticating and registering users, he has it all right here. And you can customize this. Obviously, you can override these, but anyway, there's routes. What I wanted to do, though, is I wanted to say we've got our database with posts, right? So high-quality content here. I used database migrations to create these tables. Database migrations lets you put your database structure in your code. That way when you ship your code and you run the migrations, the database is updated for you when you deploy. So you don't have to like take the site down, git pull, go add a column manually, take the site back up and hope it worked. It's in your code. It makes it really easy to work with your team too. If you got somebody else, they push a bunch of migrations up, you don't have to call them and say, hey, how'd you do that? You just migrate, boom, and it's all there. So that's what's great about migrations. What I wanted to do, though, is let's log into our admin. I already have all the authentication stuff in here, and I have a users table here with myself. And I'm just going to go ahead and log in and show you guys the highest quality free admin template on the net. Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to build the CRUD interface for posts. So you're the administrator of this blog. You log in here, you marvel at the beautiful design, and then we decide, okay, I need to manage that model, posts. So what I'm going to do, can't zoom in here. Oh man, I can do this. Can you see that? PHP artisan, make controller, posts controller. Now, if you wanted this to be a bare one without the resource methods, you could. And just define your own method names, register your routes accordingly. But we're just going to go ahead and generate that basic one. And it did it for me. So now I have this post controller here. Ta-da. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to move it. Just, oops. Oh, man. Wow, I'm having issues. Move it into our admin namespace, separation concerns. So now this controller is just kind of separated out into the admin namespace for ease of use. So in this, we want a menu item over here that says a link to the index page for our posts. So now that I have that controller set up, I'm going to go ahead and go into Resources, Views, Admin, Partials, Nav. This is where I put my links. And I'm just going to copy this structure. And you'll see we'll use a route admin posts index. I'll go ahead and give it an active class. So this is a really easy way. Request is admin/posts. If it is, I'm going to give it an active class. Otherwise, we're going to give it diddly squat. Because I don't have all the font awesome icons memorized, it's going to be the same one. Okay, so I have that. Now it's going to fail. If I try to do this, it's going to fail because we don't have a, oh, because I typed something wrong. That's why. Route, admin posts index not defined. So that, since we're using route names, you don't have any broken links because you'll just get exceptions everywhere, and hopefully you see those. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and enter our routes, and I have a route group here. And the route group lets you define some settings on the route group that apply to all the routes inside. So all of these have a prefix of admin. They all are in the admin namespace, and they all require you to be authenticated. This is where we define one of those middlewares. So now inside here, once we've been authenticated, I'm going to say route resource posts post controller. And all of a sudden, we'll have admin.post.index as a valid link that doesn't return anything because that controller method is empty. But who wants to be obligatory? And that's the controller method that handles it. So really easy to organize your code really quickly. The routes just magically work. So what do we want to do? What should this table do? Well, we're going to end up needing to return a view. So I have some views spec'd out. Thank you. I have some views just kind of stubbed out. So this is an empty view. We'll look at it. Posts index. You'll see that we're extending our admin layout, and we have our content here. Our admin layout does all the stuff you'd expect. Here's my yield styles. Here's my sidebar, my nav. I always extract that out. Flash messages, I'll show you how those work in a minute. There's the content, and there's yield scripts. Just like I said, that's about how my templates look. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace this table with actual stuff. So we've got an ID, and the post has a title. Actually, that's really about all I have. So we'll just actions. So we'll get rid of our table content because it's high quality stuff. And before we do that, we need to get a list of our posts from the database. Magic. Now you can do some really cool things here. You can say like where published is true, order by, publish at, etc. You can do pretty much anything you can with this typical SQL query using this very expressive thing. And then another thing that's really neat is you can just say post available get. And once you've done that, you can go to your model and create a method, scope available. And that accepts the query builder, and you return query where published, true, etc. Really nice for if you use the same query, like you have all this data, but only about half of them are public on the site because of permissions, because of whatever, and you want to use that query over and over and over again, use a query scope. You can also define global scopes, which are applied to every database query made unless you negate it, which you can do as well. And I'll get into this model in a little bit as well. But we're just going to call post all. And then we're going to make sure to pass that in to our view, which again is an associative array where the key is the word posts, the value is the value of the posts variable. So now we can for each through, and this is some text for you. We're going to for each through the posts as post. And then let's create a table row for that. And we're going to use the post ID and the post title. Now I have a really nice trait that I've made, and I think I have it in here. This trait is called linkable. I put it on most of my Eloquent models because it's really easy for me to say get view link, get edit link, get delete link, and this returns the HTML for me so I don't end up repeating myself over and over again. And then I have this method called get table links, which returns all those links to me. So that's what I'll use here. The exclamation point syntax is non-escaped HTML coming in. All the other double curly braces, that's the blade syntax, but it will escape that. So if I refresh this, I've got a table with all of our information. And we have working links to viewing the resource and editing it. And so now we just got to kind of fill in the rest. Am I going too fast? Do we have any questions? Good? All right. I'm going to skip create and store because they're very similar to edit and update, right? So I'm just going to skip those. And now, one thing I wanted to show you as well, since I've done that, those routes don't work. So we're going to say this has all of those resource methods except, I can't type today, create and store. Now those routes don't even get registered. Those, if you try to go to /post/create, you get a 404. So now we got show. Let's just die and dump the ID that's passed in here. And let's go ahead and view one of these. You see, all I get is a string of 1. But if I wanted to go into my routes file, and I'll put all the model bindings together, I'm going to say route model posts. That's because that's the name of the resource up here. Oops, sorry. Right here. So that's going to be the name of the route parameter, and that refers to an app post model. And now, with just that, the value that's passed into my controller method is the actual instance. And if you go in, I know this is tiny, you go into attributes, you have an ID of 1, and all the data is populated for you right there. So instead of dying and dumping that out, we'll just return a view admin posts show. And I'll have to rename this variable. And you also type hint too, which is really nice. Now that you can type hint it here, which if you use an IDE like PHP Storm, now you have access to all the methods that are available on the model. So I like to type in most controllers as well. So now I've got that view in there. So this is, again, another stubbed out view that I just set up for this talk. We'll just go ahead and fill in our post title. We'll fill in our post body. Let's pretend we have a WYSIWYG installed. And then usually what I'll do is I'll do something like a DL, and then I've got DT as the ID. And if we wanted a created at, Laravel defaults to shipping timestamp columns in your migrations for created at and updated at. They're in all your migrations by default, and you have to explicitly turn them off if you don't want the query builder to fill in those timestamps for you. So you just don't even have to think about it. Also, what's nice is created at, when you pull that attribute off of your model, it uses dynamic attribute getters, since there's not actually an attribute on the model, on the class called created at. There's not a public property. That's what I was looking for. On the class, it uses a method called __ get, passes in the key, and that's like an overloading function. And we'll use that to, Laravel has its magic to return the value out of the database for us. Created at is a special one in that it returns a Carbon object. I don't know if you're familiar with Carbon. It's like Moment.js for PHP. It's just a time management library. It's phenomenal. So I can just write off here, format, update year. Go on. So there's our little post. It's called content, isn't it? So that's a very easy way to edit that, to set that up. Now we're going to go ahead and edit this post. How am I doing on time? I have 10 minutes left. Oh, Snapple. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I wanted to show you the form builder, but I don't have time. I will show you one more thing real quick. This is now an instance of posts. So I'm going to say post delete, string deleted. Go back to our index of posts. I'm going to go ahead and delete the post with an ID of 1. It's been deleted. Now in our database, I turned on something called soft deletes. It's a trait that you just pop onto your model, add a column to your database, and Laravel will now ignore this post because it has a deleted at timestamp. If I set this to null, it will be back. And you didn't even get to see it gone, sorry. But, so it's back. If I delete it and then go back, refresh, it will be gone. Soft deletes, like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push all this to GitHub. Doing things, right? Now let's deploy this. I've got a server on Laravel Forge called SGF webdevs.angie.me. Here's our PHP info. I created this server and provisioned it last night with the click of a button, literally. Logged into Laravel Forge, and I'll actually show you the form. It uses your DigitalOcean API or your Linode API, or I don't think it does Rackspace. He's not a moron. And it will also do a custom VPS. So if you spin up, I had to spin up an Amazon server the other day, and so you can use a custom VPS. And so here's what you do: is you put in the name, all the information, and you hit create server, and he'll just give you, he'll say run this command, and it's a curl command, pipe it to SH, and it will provision the server. It's so stinking cool. But in this case, I just chose my personal credentials. I gave it a server name. I set the server size. I clicked the button. All of a sudden, pardon all my stuff, I have a server, which I can SSH into. Actually, that's Homestead. SSH forge at SGF webdevs.nd.me. I haven't even done it yet. Hit the button, then I went home. So now I'm SSH'd into the server. It automatically, Laravel Forge has my public key, my public SSH key, so it automatically installed that key for me so I can SSH in. I'm obviously, with that key, just kidding, he also generates a new key pair for me and puts the newly generated public key on my GitHub profile for me. So now the server has access to all my private repositories. It comes with this default site, which is this PHP info page. So you can see it's running PHP 5.6.6, soon to be 5.7. Soon to be PHP version 7. Right?
All of Microsoft.
Yeah. I don't know. This is all the PHP info. It's all set up. This is obviously built for hosting Laravel sites. So it has this default site. You can add a new one, and this is it configures Nginx for you. So if you're an Apache person, it's like configuring virtual host, saying the host name is whatever. This default one is the catch-all. But if we wanted to set up an SGF web devs one, we could. We'll just go ahead and use this one because it's quicker. This is the edit site page. We're going to install, he has all the really, really necessary apps. You can install Git, WordPress, CraftCMS, or Minecraft server. Yeah, all the important stuff. I do use a Laravel Forge server to host my Minecraft server, which is modded like nobody's business, and I love it. Okay, Adam Goose, SGF, web dev. So this is the name of the repository. It is public. We're going to use a master branch. We're going to install composer dependencies. I'm not going to run migrations because the code base does not know my database password, and it never will. And Git will never see those credentials. We use what is called .env. It's a PHP package that helps you manage your environment configuration or your environment variables, and then the config pulls from that environment file, which is not versioned. So I'm going to go ahead and install this repository. Meanwhile, let's go add that configuration in. And I got this email from Taylor last night. So I get a sudo password, I get a database password, I have everything I need, and I will show you config. Oh well, here's my local.env. So pretty much all I need to drop in are the database ones. So I'm just going to do it really quickly. dbhost is localhost, and this is a Laravel 5 application. Who loves Angular? Oh, it's so nice. So he built this on Angular, and I just love it. DB username is Forge. You get to learn these. When I created the server, I just left the default, so it automatically created a Forge database for me, and we'll just use that. DB database is Forge. And then my passwords are here. Now, those, if I cd into the default directory on the server, there's my code, by the way. This .env file, it has those values for me. So he gives you the UI to manage them. Obviously, you can delete them and whatever you need to do from here. You can't edit them. He doesn't store them. That's just, I know that you have these 4 variables, so if you need to edit one, you delete it, you add it again, and he'll SSH in and do it for you. So now that we have all that installed, here's our site page. So this is where I clicked GitHub and install repository. We've got, here's the deployment script. You can go into, he'll go into the directory, he'll pull from Git for you, he'll run Composer install, and he'll migrate for you. So let's just go ahead and do that. And another thing I'm going to do too, before I forget, I'm going to SSH into this. And then that's the password. So I'm just going to connect. So this is that connection server onto that remote server. So this is MySQL. Forge, notice there are no tables. If we just run the deploy script, which is going to go into the directory, pull from Git, which isn't going to do anything, Composer install, which isn't going to do anything because it's already done it, and then it's going to remigrate for me. So I'm going to hit deploy now. Got a little nice indicator up there. You don't have one there. So if you had this page open, first of all, I'd wonder how you got my password and my two-factor authentication. Second of all, you would see a purple button here because it is deploying. And then we can view the latest deployment log. And as you can see, already up to date, nothing to install or update. Migration. Oh, look, my migrations ran. So now I have these tables here. Now what I'm going to do is I wrote what are called database seeders. It's a class that generates content for you. So I'm just going to run php artisan db :seed. And it's going to warn because I'm in production, but command canceled. Why? Yes, go. There it is. So it seeded the users table. There's a user. It seeded the posts table. There's some posts. And now, Python line. That's how cool Laravel Forge is. It also does queues. So queue workers. Laravel has the easiest queuing system you've ever seen. 4 was okay. 5 is excellent, especially if you start getting into the command bus architecture and event handling. You can queue your event handlers by literally all you have to do is implement an interface on the class, which has no public methods on the interface. So you just type in implements class name, boom, and then that event handler will be queued for you, which means it doesn't block your HTTP requests while that logic's being happening. Emails can be queued very easily. You run the queue worker from here, click, 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 and it's working, and you have asynchronous jobs in your web application. Installing an SSL certificate is easy. You can create a CSR, you can install an existing one, or you can clone one from a different server. And then on the server itself, you can very easily install SSH keys. So my Forge account says install my SSH key and my subcontractor's SSH key, so he can just SSH in if he needs to. Cron job scheduler for you, which is nice. Daemons, this uses supervisor. Who knows what supervisor is? It lets you run pretty much any command as a daemon. So my Minecraft server is running on it. It's the JVM command running on supervisor, so it acts like a daemon. It keeps it online. If the daemon crashes or whatever, it'll start it back up. If it crashes too many times in a sort of short period of time, it will suspend it and email you, stuff like that. It's really neat. You cannot SSH in with a password to these servers. He builds them nice and secure for you. You can set up private networking, so I can say this server can connect to these. So you notice I have 3 sites: Ichthus, Edison, Edmund, and Eliza. That's my client's daughters or kids' names. And he has 2 web servers and a database server. And they're all set to be able to connect to each other just by clicking these checkboxes, and they have private networking enabled. And then you can open ports. So you can't connect to the MySQL database from this computer. I have to SSH in, and then I can do it. But I could open the port if I wanted to through 306 from only an IP address. So IP tables management's really easy there. With a click of a button, you can install Blackfire, which is a very new PHP application profiler. You can install New Relic that'll monitor the server and your applications just by typing in your license key. You can install Papertrail, which is just a really nice log viewer. And circles is the last thing about Forge. This is my circle that I have my subcontractor in, and he has access to these servers. And I am a part of these circles, and I have access to all the blue servers. So it's just server sharing. And that's Forge. So if you don't want to SSH in anymore, get this. I'm out of time. Questions?
Still got 1 minute.
I still got 1 minute. I still have 4 seconds, actually. I mean, that's all I got. I wanted to get a little bit more into the CRUD stuff, but I'm going to show you that I can prove to you that login works. I heard my password. So this is the stuff we did since I committed it. It's all there. The edit form doesn't do anything, but thank you. Thanks, guys. Sorry, I just rambled. I know. I'm crazy. But,
Yeah, great.
We're like at 2 times speed.
2 times speed, yeah. Laracast's at 2x. Jeffrey Way talks a lot slower than I do.
I did have a question about your directory structure.
Please.
Is that like what you normally use? Or?
This is the Laravel structure. I didn't edit the structure at all. So
Really?
Laravel comes with it takes some adapting to, for sure. Pretty much all your PHP classes. This directory is PSR4 auto-loaded for you. So this is the app namespace, and
Is 5 versus,
this is 5.
is it pretty different than 4, or has this been pretty normal throughout the
Let me tell you this. The upgrade guide says start a fresh application and copy all your crap over. So it's quite a bit different as far as the directory structure goes. Yeah. Like he never said namespace controllers before, but now all your controllers are namespaced. All of your models are namespaced. It's kind of a pain in the butt for somebody who doesn't know PHP very well. But what's cool is if this is currently called app. It's the namespace of my entire project. App name SGF web devs. Oh man. So I'm just calling PHP artisan app name. Now if I open the user class, the namespace has changed, and I missed capital S. But all my files have changed. If we look at Tower, it's like, boom. All these files. And the composer JSON, so your autoloading gets updated. It does everything for you. So if you don't like the app namespace, he makes it really easy for you to swap that out. Any other questions? Oh, did you? Sorry, I'll put this back so you can see. It's very lightweight when it ships. The traits is my directory.
It reminds me of Angular.
Of Angular?
The way it's laid out.
Yeah. I've yet to find the perfect way to structure an Angular app. Everybody does it so differently that it's kind of like there is no one way. Oh, come on, somebody's got to have a fun question for me. My favorite kind of pie? I have 3.14 favorite kinds of pie. Rhubarb custard. That's my answer. Well, thanks, guys. Learn about Laravel. It's fun. It's prettier than this, I promise. This template. I just wasn't about to go pay for one for this, and this is the best I could find, and I was disgusted. Yeah. Oh, and then really quickly, on Envoyer. This is the service that's going to come out next week. Taylor's just a beast. He just like spins these out like nobody's business. I mean, Forge hasn't been out for a year.
Speaking of being a beast, I heard him mention that the first time messing around with Angular was building the Forge site.
Yeah. Yep. I've unminified his code before, and I kind of laughed at him. I just looked at his source code. Well, because I want to build a mobile app with AppGyver, which, if you're interested, tell him, and I'll come back 2 months from now. But I want to build a mobile app for him for Forge because I want one for me. And so I tried to hack his API, but I couldn't do it. He's too good for that. So.
All right.
Well, cool.
Another round. Huh?
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I've got a quick announcement. Most of you know me. I'm the economic tech director over the project. Mike, let me plug real quick. I am looking to fill a couple of jobs with the organization. I'm looking for a solutions architect, and I'm also looking for a web dev. So if you're interested. For requirements gathering and business analysis, but really it's got an aspect of project management and running that.
Is it more front end or back end?
Primary focus for me right now is more back end, but there's always a front end spin to everything we do.